All righty. All right, I think we are ready, Dr. Eko. Hey,
Mhm.
everybody. So today I wanted to go live with a very special guest, Dr. Eko. Dr. Eko is a what we call the happy brain pediatrician. And so tonight we are going to talk a little bit about autism from the medical side and autism as it relates to the school side and receiving services in school. So, welcome, Dr. Eko. Thank you for being here with me. I'm so excited to have you on with me.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Such an honor to be with you. You're amazing.
Thank you. Likewise, yes. So just so we can just kind of get started, right? So talk to us a little bit about why a medical diagnosis is needed for autism.
That's an excellent question. So, a medical diagnosis is needed for autism because if your child doesn't get a medical diagnosis, then they don't get access to receiving the support that they need in school. And when I say support, I mean if they need extra time on tests, if they need to be in a smaller classroom, if they need to have an extra pair of hands help them in class, they are not probably not going to receive that unless they have a medical diagnosis, right? And to add to that, it's absolutely critical that your child gets a medical diagnosis if you're suspecting autism in the first 5 years of life. And why is that important? Because the first 5 years of life is when brain growth is at its highest level. And so, if we're going to make changes in terms of having your child go through therapy, whether it be speech, occupational, applied behavior analysis therapy, also called ABA therapy, then it's important your child starts early because the earlier, the better, right? Because once you start helping a child um, overcome whatever deficiencies they may have in terms of speech, say that your child is nonverbal, you want to teach your child to start being verbal early. You don't want to wait till your child is 8, 9, 10. It doesn't mean it can't be done, but it's definitely harder. And so the earlier you get a medical diagnosis, the better. And I should add here that the medical diagnosis is not a death sentence. It doesn't in any way define your child. Your child is not defined by this diagnosis. Rather, if you look at it from the angle of my child is going to be supported adequately and deservingly, because your child deserves to be supported like they should be, right? They don't deserve to just go from class to class to class and suffer and have low self esteem because they are not getting the help and they're not performing the way they should. And so, getting a medical diagnosis, even though you may feel like, oh, I don't want to label my child, is critical for your child to get the help that they need and they deserve. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. And I am so thankful for you to share that with everyone because oftentimes kids reach school age and there's so many characteristics that you see that you're like, okay, wait a minute. I think this baby has possibly has autism, and the parents have never even looked into getting a diagnosis. And so, one of the things is that, parents often rely on the school system, and there's a misconception that the school system can give you a diagnosis, right? And so, the school system does not diagnose autism at all. What they do is they have a criteria to determine whether or not your child would be eligible for services under that category of autism.
mhm,
And so, even though when there is a medical diagnosis that's brought to the school system still has their own evaluation process
right,
that they go through to see whether or not a student meets criteria to receive those services. Because you and I both know just because you have autism doesn't necessarily mean you always are eligible for services within the school system.
right.
So, talk to us a little bit about um, private services and what that diagnosis does for private services.
Um, Sorry, you cut out a little bit when you said,
I'm sorry, I wanted you to talk a little bit about private services and how that diagnosis helps support getting private services.
You mean private services in terms of therapies?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. So receiving, okay. So yes, without the medical diagnosis, often you're not able to get access to therapies such as ABA therapy, which is specialized behavior therapy for children with autism, because your medical doctor, your child's pediatrician has to do a referral to the ABA provider for you to get the therapy. And if your child doesn't have a diagnosis of autism, therefore your pediatrician cannot and will not give you a referral for ABA therapy, because that's just how it works, right? Because the ABA people, providers themselves, will not accept your child without a referral from your doctor. So we're back to, we need a medical diagnosis. And even, I mean, for speech and occupational therapy, as a pediatrician evaluating your child, they can see that your child, okay, your child is nonverbal by 18 months, and they can say, okay, yes, your child needs speech therapy, or your child needs occupational therapy because they may not be using their motor skills like they should. But that's the extent that your pediatrician can do. If your child has behaviors like they're hitting their heads on the wall, they are hurting themselves, they have lots of difficulty with socializing, then your child needs ABA therapy. But again, you can't get to it until you have a medical diagnosis. And so that's again is the limiting factor there. And so that's why it's important to get that diagnosis as early as possible so your child can get into all the therapies they need.
And so one of the things that we see oftentimes is that there's a reliance on the school providing those therapies, right? So there really isn't, truthfully, ABA therapy per se in schools, right?
Right.
They may have a BCBA that comes in
Mhm.
and takes a look at a child's case, and then they may have a paraprofessional or an RBT
Right.
provide some services and support to the child. But ultimately, tell me your thoughts on parents that decide, well, the school is providing speech therapy, the school is providing OT, the school is providing some behavioral support. We don't need private therapy because that's just too much, after a long day of work or in the afternoons is too much for my child. What are your thoughts on that?
So I disagree because if you start, like I've just said, if you can get your child into therapy diagnosed early within the first 5 years or within the first 6 years of life, then you want your child to get as much therapy as possible. So you can't rely on a 30-minute session of speech therapy once a week in the school. That really doesn't move the needle. So you want your child getting therapy at school and outside of school. If a parent that really wants their child to thrive will advocate for as much therapy as possible from both outside of school and in school as well, because the more we can give the child in the beginning, then we can always back off. But it's so important to give the child as much support as possible first few years of life. Yes, and that's when you really start to see a difference. And I'm going to add that the children who do excellently well are those children whose parents also know what to do at home that
Mhm.
mirrors what the therapist did either at school or outside therapy. Because if you simply drop off your child at therapy and you have no idea what's going on, guess what, your child will do well in center with the therapist, and when they get home you're going to get the behaviors, or the your child may not do the same things they're doing with their therapist. And so if you want your child to do well across board, then you want to make sure you're engaging with the therapist for them to also show you, at least give you a heads up, what can you do at home to help continue what the child is learning in therapy.
Absolutely. You just dropped a gem right there. That was a gem. That was a gem because you can do everything in the center, everything with the speech and language pathologist. But if you're not taking on some of that responsibility and implementing some of those strategies at home, just doesn't work out like it should. Yeah. So, can we talk about some barriers to diagnosis?
Okay, yes. The first barrier would be denial, right? You've had dreams of this beautiful child, and now this child is here, and you notice there may be something not quite the same as with other children the child's age, or something that just stands out to you, but you may be afraid and feel like if I say something, if I ask for help, then my child will get labeled. And like we talked about earlier, the diagnosis is not a label, because there is no limit. If you decide to take on this mindset of my child has no limits, right? Basically, because you're going to surround your child with as much support as possible, and for your child to become the best version of themselves, right? Not the version we have in our heads, the best version for your child. And so in that scenario, your child is limitless, and if you just keep encouraging them and putting all the all the help and support that they need in front of them, then your child will thrive, right? And so that's the first thing I see, is parents being afraid of the label. And it's not a label of death, it's a label of hope. Because think about it, we have to always think about it from the growth side. If we give your precious child as much help as they need early on, they definitely they definitely will, it changes the trajectory of their life. Really, honestly, I've seen this so many times. There's a big difference between the 3-year-old in therapy versus the 8-year-old that just started therapy. And I'm not saying the 8-year-old won't do well, but definitely age and being young and grasping all of those things is on your child's side when you start early. So don't be afraid of it. It's not a thing to be afraid of. And yes, I know it's, how will my child survive in this world? Is this the end of it for my child once you have that? And the answer is no. What's his name? Elon Musk is one of the richest people in the world. He does have autism, right? So that's what I mean by limitless. The fact that your child has autism doesn't diminish their intelligence. It just means that, okay, their brain works differently than yours might, and so we're going to give them the support they need to be able to navigate this world the way they are, right? It's not about changing your child. So, and the other barriers could also be the wait list. The wait list is horrendously long, too long, horribly long. That's why I said I glow pediatrics. Because if you think about it, if children have been, I've talked to parents that children have been on a wait list for 4 years. How is that even possible? Because that's already half the time I just talked about, that we could have made a difference in the child's life gone. And then all the frustration, and then the child is moving from class to class and not getting the help they need. And so that's the other thing. But then there are services like Glow Pediatrics, where, okay, we may not be in network with all the insurances, but we're going to work with parents to get that diagnosis done, even if it means stretching out the payment, whatever it is. We'll work with you. But the is first taking that step, right, and asking for help. And so we're here to help. And the last big one is, especially in the Black and brown community, where we think, okay, the child is okay, Uncle George was like this and he was fine. But the thing is, we live in a whole different world, and now there's actually help like there wasn't that much before. Right now we can actually support your child. Your child can learn better, your child can grow to be the best version of themselves. So why wouldn't we take advantage of that and not just say, oh, it just might be um something we don't have to address. Yeah. So.
That last one was a huge one. So I'm not sure, like, how do we overcome some of this mindset in the Black and brown community around um, not only obtaining a diagnosis, but just even trying to get an evaluation and just rule out certain things, the weaknesses are noted, they see them, but it's either just kind of like, oh, we'll wait and see, that little game, we'll wait and see, and next thing you know, they're 10 and can't read. Or it's a matter of, well, I don't want anybody to know that my
Mhm.
child is struggling, and I don't know if that's a ego or shame issue, or it's you're trying to shield your child. I don't know which one it is. But that's definitely one of the concerns that we have. Now, obviously, things are getting better, but
Right,
we still have a lot of people that are not getting their children diagnosed for
right,
those things that you mentioned, for those very three things.
right,
And so tonight, I would like to share with everyone your information because you are currently in 10 different states, right?
right.
If you can share the 10 states that you're in and how they can find you and what they need to do to get their child diagnosed, I think that would be helpful for everyone.
Okay, I'm gonna try. So yes, like she mentioned, I work with. I am the founder of Glow Pediatrics, and so we're a virtual practice. We come into the comfort of your home. You don't have to leave your home. You don't have to travel. We'll do the evaluation virtually. We don't need referrals either. So we've cut away all of the limiting factors. All it is go to our website and fill out the contact form, and we'll be in touch with you. It's as simple as that. And so the states we're in, let me see: New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Tennessee, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas, Maryland, Georgia. That's 10. Okay, great. I did it.
You got it. You got it.
Oh, no, it's more than 10.
Oh,
Louisiana. Yeah, we just added Louisiana. So, yes, there's 11.
oh, okay. So you are in 11 different states providing evaluations virtually. No wait list, no 4-year waiting. All they have to do is go to your website and fill out the contact form. So, what is your website address?
It's www.glowpediatrics.com. Just like it says on my name here. So just put that together, no space.com. That's it.
Okay, so www.glowpediatrics.com.
Yes.
Um, and so we talked about this before offline. So you provide those services and you also have opportunities where you can speak with parents in regards to kind of dealing with their emotions. But like we talked about, you don't always have, that type of time because your focus is on evaluating children and providing diagnoses. So tell me, what do you recommend for parents to do when their child receives a diagnosis? Are there any recommendations, any advice that you can give to them for that emotional piece of it?
Absolutely. Oh, we recently created a solution for that too. So my vision and my mission really is to be able to wrap arms around parents and hold their hands as they walk along this journey. So we no longer just hand you an evaluation, because I discovered, oh my goodness, it's a maze out there. Like, where do you even start? I'm just going to hand you the thing and say, oh yeah, go figure out what to do with your child. So now we have resource manager, we call that Glow Pathways, where we'll walk with parents and show them what resources they have in their state for care for their children. We can attend the meetings, the IEP meetings, as advocates for the parents to help assist them in that way. But we also have, we're starting parent coaching for parents, and it's going to be run by a pediatrician who has a child with autism. So she's lived it. She's also working with Glow Pediatrics doing evaluations, but this is something she's lived. And so we have parent coaching going on as well as integrative care. And what that means is basically, after a child has been diagnosed, a lot of children with autism suffer from constipation. They don't sleep well, they're picky eaters. And so we address those things because, believe it or not, they are all connected to behavior, right? If a child is not sleeping well and doesn't feel good in their tummy, their behavior is going to be more aggressive. It's simply that. If you think about it as an adult, if you don't sleep well, you don't function well. So besides the differences in brain function already with autism, there's also the physical, the bodily functions that we need to address as well. So that's what we do as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me
So,
check because I think we might have some questions here that I
oh,
want to
okay. But I
sure.
wanted to give some tips about the emotional, what
Absolutely. Yes,
to
go
do.
ahead, please.
Yeah. So the first thing is allow yourself to go through the grieving process. It is a grieving process because you were pregnant and you had all these dreams and hopes for your child, and now we're not quite it's not quite playing out the way we had hoped and we envisioned, right? And so it's allowing yourself to, I always tell parents when I'm giving the diagnosis, I had to do that 2 or 3 times today, is number one, you didn't cause this, right? We don't know the cause for autism. And so often moms will take it on themselves and say, it's my fault. And so, right there, that's the first thing I'll say. Moms, dads, you didn't do anything to cause this. It's not your fault, right? And don't beat yourself up. And it's just the second thing is going through the grieving process, accepting this is what it is, but knowing this is not the end of it, right? And
Yes.
that we can feel sad and we can cry, and it's okay to do that. But after that is seeing your child through the lens of possibilities, because that's really the truth. It's not me trying to be cute. And I know Dr. Dannette, Dr. Taylor can back me up on this. It's the truth. There's possibilities abound for your child, and you just have to choose to see your child in through those lens, not the lens of there's something wrong with you and there's deficits and you're never going to amount to anything. That's the farthest thing from the truth, because every child has a strength. And so when you have grieved, remember that your child has strengths, and we're going to need to just discover them like a detective and boost them. So, for example, if your little 3-year-old hears a song and can drum it out, or the beat, or can sing exactly after hearing the song one time, that's a gift. And you want to boost that, right? By giving them music lessons, if possible, whatever it is, right? And so those are some upfront tips I would say right after you get the diagnosis. So
So, we have a couple of questions, and we're going to have to post in the chat um,
okay.
your states that you're in. So,
Oh, okay. I can write it.
Dr. Boulevard, I know you are in TikTok right now for me, so I hope that you can hear me. And can you drop it in the chat for me? And I'm going to drop it here on these other ones. So go ahead and tell me what they are, and I'm going to drop it in the chat on my
Oh,
end.
I'm typing it in for you. Do you want me to just keep
Sure.
typing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, I'm doing that right now. Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas. Um, what else? 1, 2, 3, 4. Pennsylvania.
I also know while you're typing that in that someone else asked about therapy or parents, therapy for parents. And do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yes. Give me one. I feel like I'm in. Do you see me clearly? I think my lights went off.
I can still see you, though. I can still see you.
Okay, I will mess with it. Okay, fine. Let's see. I feel like I'm missing one state. Hold on. Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Texas. Maryland. There, that's what I'm missing. Okay. Okay, good. I put the states up there. So what was the question exactly, please?
They were asking, was there therapy for parents?
Yes, there is therapy for parents. So yes, we have a parent coaching group where it's gonna be led by a pediatrician who has a child with autism. And so in the parent coaching group, it's just meeting with parents and just walking you through the different emotions, the grief, the how acceptance stage, and what are the things that we can do practically at home, like to help parents be able to be the best version of themselves, because we parents have to do well ourselves before we can really pour into them, right? And our kids are watching us like hawks, right? So we parents have to heal and be able to accept where we are, where our children are, and walk through that. So yes, absolutely, there's that available. And even if you can't join our parent group, if you're able to just reach out to any local therapist that you have, they should be able to work with you as well. Yes, I think everybody needs a therapist. Even the therapists need therapy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that one. Everyone should have a therapist. And most therapists that I know have therapists.
They better.
Absolutely. And I will also add, Dr. Eko, one of the things that I do as well is, the group coaching for parents of children with autism, because at the end of the day, not only from the emotional side of it, but just from the side of it of navigating all of these things that have to be done, right? And so life is hard enough as it is, but then you add the layer of the therapies. And as your child gets older, for those of us with young adult children with autism, you have, things regarding social services and trying to get them employed and helping them to learn job skills. Because I always tell parents that the easy part, and I can say this with all confidence, and please don't, get mad at me for saying this, but the easy part is when your kids are in school, when they're in that K through 12 haven,
Yes.
where, everything is kind of laid out for you and you can go the extra mile with private services or not. Hopefully you do. But once those services are gone, because the older your child gets, the less services that they have access to. And there are several parents that I have come in contact with that their children were fairly successful in school, but they allowed fear to step in and they did not move forward with their child with education and training or employment skills. And so at the end of the day, it comes a time where you have to make sure that you're in the right frame of mind to handle all of those things. And what I do is I hold parents' hand to help them get through all of those things and provide support. And so if you guys are looking for a coach and you're a parent of a child with autism or a young adult with autism, you know where to find me. So one more time, Dr. Eko, you can find her at glowpediatrics.com. She's in 11 states. If your child needs to be evaluated, or if you think there's a concern or you have concerns, please reach out to her. You can reach out to her virtually through the contact form, and they will make contact with you as quickly as possible. Know that there are no hangups with insurance. You don't have to go through all of that headache. And Dr. Eko is absolutely amazing. So I know that it's going to be a positive experience for you and for your child.
Thank you.
Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave everyone with?
I was going to say, you should take Dr. Taylor up on her offer. All parents listening that need parent coaching, talk to Dr. Taylor. She's amazing. And I mean that with I mean all of it. So, yes. Last words of wisdom, parents. You are the best parents for your child. Remember that on the days when you want to scream, and it's okay to scream, and please ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help. None of us have arrived. We're all imperfect and we're all just doing it one step at a time, and we're here to hold your hand. So please reach out to Dr. Taylor, reach out to me. We're happy to be of service to you. So,
Absolutely. Everybody have a good night.
good night.